It seems like we have finally found our replacement for Mauricio Pochettino as we get ready to prepare for Enzo Maresca. Today, my friends, I'm here to discuss all the latest manager news as well as giving some insight behind Enzo Maresca and what to expect. So I hope you guys enjoy today's video. Make sure for this one in particular, you leave your thoughts and opinions around this potential hiring of Enzo Maresca. So I hope you guys enjoy. Hit that like button, and without wasting any more time. Now, this manager race has taken many different twists and turns. At one point, it seemed like Amorim and McKenna were the two lead favourites to take over from Pochettino, but so much has changed over the last few days, and it does seem like Damasio's initial report suggesting that Maresca was leading the race to become the new manager were actually right from the beginning. Now, let's take things back to yesterday where we found out from David Ornstein that managers such as Thomas Frank, who was last choice, McKenna, who we've now ended interest in, and even Zerbi have all been displaced as Enzo Maresca is now in the lead now to take over from Pochettino. Now, I'll give you guys some insight behind all the other managers. We start with Thomas Frank, and Thomas Frank was seen as the last choice candidate that we would fall to in case anything messed up, but other guys we prefer to sign. In the case of McKenna, it now seems like based on reports coming out today, he could most likely remain with Ipswich Town. And I think for Ipswich fans, this is probably the news they've been waiting to hear because, you know, he's taken them up in successful promotions, and to lose out on the key man behind your success when you need him the most, it could be quite harsh. Who knows what's happened between him and Brighton? But in the meantime, it seems like Brighton maybe now going back for Graham Potter. So it's crazy how things work in this game. Who would have saw this coming? It seems like in the case of McKenna, clubs like us and United, who also expressed interest and intent to hire him, they felt like in the end maybe it was too much of a big gap for him to go from a championship team to the demands and expectations and pressure at a top 4 level when he's still a relatively new manager. That's interesting, but to go in even further, it was reported on our part that we feel like if we did hire McKenna, it would suit him to come to a club that already has these structures in place, that is already a ready-made team and club. It'll be a lot easier for him in that capacity. But in terms of him being that manager to maybe kickstart a new revolution, to kickstart new ideas, and to kickstart, you know, what the club are hoping we can finally become, they didn't see him as that candidate, which is interesting because Maresca doesn't even necessarily have as much experience compared to a McKenna. Now we go back to Zerbi, and the reason why it seems like Zerbi has become the second choice option because things haven't been completely ruled out just yet, but at the moment Maresca is number 1 with Zerbi number 2. Well, there was belief that maybe his fiery temperament and personality could be off-putting to work with professionally for the boards. And I have to say this, I'm sorry, but I feel like this is so insecure and this is so beta because even outside of Zerbi, it's the principle that I don't agree with because let's keep things real. Let's say hypothetically we have one of the leading managers in the game working under us. They have fiery personalities. They are not pushovers. They are not wet wipes. So I don't like the fact that the boards would feel maybe threatened or they could be put off by energy like this when I thought this was bread and butter in this game. And let's keep things real. Maresca is no pushover. If I'm going to be going for this job, I'll say whatever these guys want to hear, but let's not be fooled into thinking that this is a weak-minded manager that will only agree with the club say that he should do because he is not that guy. And I think they will learn that over time if at any point, hopefully not, but if there was any friction between the directors and the new manager. So that's the latest around appointments that aren't going to be turned to right now, which takes us on nicely to the breaking news this afternoon. And we discuss the latest around Enzo Maresca because today we have asked for permission now to talk to Maresca to get a deal over the line, and we're learning this about reports. We are going to offer him a 2-year deal plus the option to extend by a further year if he triggers certain metrics in the contract, which is identical to the contract we offered to Mauricio Pochettino. It seems like at the moment he is set to sign contract terms for us. We don't understand how much money he will earn, but that doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. The most important thing is Maresca has said yes, he wants to become our new manager and he wants to sign for us. The only thing left right now for us is to agree a compensation package with Leicester City, with reports suggesting that Maresca's compensation fee will be between 8.5 million to 10 million pounds. So this is a lot of money. This is quite similar to the ridiculous amount of money that we spent to originally hire Graham Potter. So you'd like to think that if this is the third time now we are committing, putting money where our vision is behind Enzo Maresca. Let's hope that it's third time right, third time lucky, and that Maresca now gets the time to make things work. And I say this because we've only offered him 2 years plus a 1 year extension. And is that necessarily showing that we are committed towards an Enzo Maresca? Now, for this final part of the video, I want to just give some thoughts and opinions behind Enzo Maresca, because I feel like for maybe a lot of people in the fan base, we didn't necessarily see him as number one. That doesn't mean that there's hate towards him, or this feeling of apprehension, or this feeling of not rating the appointment, especially compared to the level of candidates that the club had on the horizon. But I think ultimately what I'm deciphering from the conversations and the opinions is the fact that, okay, are we ready now for this positional style of play? Because ultimately, we have kind of been burnt by this as a fan base in the past, right? And maybe at times you could argue that we have the caliber of player offensively to really take advantage of this type of football. Do we have the type of players at the back that could, play out from the back with long passes like you have to turn to in this football sometimes? Maybe not. But I think my ultimate fear is this type of football sometimes, I feel like the more experienced you are, the better you are at interpreting this football. Because my fear is this young team clinical enough to really do justice to this football? Because if they're not, can Maresca necessarily get the blame for that? Because the club have to realize we have also heavily invested and put all our eggs in this youth basket. And by doing that, there has to be this feeling of patience and understanding that comes with that, right? Because a lot of times when we face issues, when we have played possession styles of football, is that at times our passing patterns, they have been figured out. The opposition do restrict the spaces in front of us quite well, which means that our passing football gets disrupted quite easily. But I think most importantly, as I've said, it's the fact that we aren't clinical enough. With this type of patient football, sometimes in a tough game, you are playing to create that perfect opportunity. And when that comes, 9 times out of 10, you must take that. You must score from that. You must capitalize from that, because that's how you change the entire tactical complexion of a game. And I think a lot of times we've done like this thing right with possession football and that thing right with possession football. The final thing every single time has been, how do we translate that in the final third? I'm not going to be all doom and gloom, because I believe with players like Nkunku and Cole Palmer, now that we have more of like a technical, imaginative profile that can play between the lines, that can play centrally like this, I think we can interpret this level of football a bit better now. But equally, this is the type of football that you have to buy into and give patience towards. You need to let the squads harmonize. You have to let the squad understand how to operate in this system, in this football. There could be some growing pains that come from that. But with this positional play football, you have to see it as like there's like a beginner level, an intermediary level, and the expert level. And managers, they have to start at the beginner level first so the team can understand what they need to do. Once you get to that intermediary level, you can add more complexities to the passing patterns, the solutions your team needs to find, your ways of playing, your ways of being. But that's not always like a seamless transition. And I do think that with our expectations and the fact that I feel like people's patience is wearing a bit thin now in terms of the direction of this football club, going back to a possession style of football where a lot of times a lot of fans have been a bit critical as time has gone on, it's going to take patience, not just us, but from the boards and from everyone, if this is really the direction we see this club heading towards. Because that has to be it now. I'm sorry, it can't be more managers coming in, because we'll look absolutely stupid. We won't look serious, and I think ultimately we'll lose all the confidence we have left in this football club. I say this because some of the criticisms that some Leicester fans had towards Maresca, they aren't unique criticisms that you've never seen before, right? There was some complaints at the time that maybe Leicester were too one-dimensional, typical complaints of maybe Maresca's game management not being great at times, and the infamous criticisms being, where is the plan B? But I do think sometimes, and when I say this, I'm just saying it as a matter of fact thing, not as an ego, arrogant thing, but sometimes the average fan isn't the most sophisticated with understanding the complexities of football. I think that's just a fair statement, right? Because when we think of plan B as a fan, plan B to us is, okay, if we're playing possession football, you know, why can't we now play counter-attack? Why can't we play with 2 strikers up front now? Like, why aren't we going to just like completely play a different way? Because that is what a plan B and C should be right now. Plan B really comes down to what new solutions do you create and find. That can come from different passing patterns. Instead of playing to your midfield players, maybe you look to find those direct, long passing routes straight to your striker to try and cause more disruption in the opposition team's shape. A plan B could be, okay, if the fullback inverts the midfield, maybe because we have to get back in the game, you now move out to the wings. We're going to have 1 guy in midfield now, and we're going to essentially have nearly 6 players up front. Another idea could be, okay, instead of passing to the right side of the pitch, we're going to actually play a bit deeper, or we're going to move to the left. This is what more of a plan B is. And I make this distinction because Maresca has shown that in helping Leicester City get promoted and get that automatic promotion spot. So that can't be dismissed. And he would argue that he's actually saved them so many points during a more difficult second part of the season by constantly finding new solutions. And I think that is definitely one thing in Maresca's arsenal that he does possess. He is someone that is self-critical, that analyzes everything, that turns towards using video analysis very rigorously during training sessions as well. He believes in this style of coaching, and with that, it means that he does look to constantly test himself. I think this is why he's got so much praise from coaches that have worked with him, players that know him. For example, I know Willy Caballero had a lot of positive things to say. You know, when players are like, listen, I know this guy is set to be a manager, but not only is he set to be a manager, he is set to be a top manager due to his meticulous mindset and nature on the game. So I think that's something for us to be aware of. But equally too, from a fan perspective, you know, I can expect at times there could be some criticisms or maybe some fans not appreciating the patient approach, the short passing, feeling like the football's not really going anywhere. And I get that when a lot of fans are paying a lot of money, because this is a very expensive luxury sport to follow, a luxury hobby to have. A level of that investment you put in, you want to see on the field, and you do want to be entertained too. I think we can be entertained under Maresca. It might not be instant though, and similar to managers like Sarri, where we didn't really see his ideas come to life until the final piece in that midfield. Loftus-Cheek became tactically good enough for Sarri to finally introduce into the first team. And once he did that, once Hudson-Odoi and Coase came through, the interpretation of that football was dramatically better to the start of the season. And in that, it culminated in a massive, absolute thrashing of Arsenal in the Europa League final. That cannot be dismissed. All I'm saying is I can envision maybe a similar trajectory for Enzo Maresca at the start of his career. What can help him though is that we do have a lot of players that have been bought already that can, I think, translate their football into this style of play. We've seen how a lot have prospered under a Zerbi. We've seen how others have prospered for their European clubs in which we signed them from. And as we've already seen this season, one of our best traits is our ability to play ball to feet, how we play on the ground. We have a lot of technical players that can receive under pressure and can find passing solutions when they're getting pressed. So we do have some positives in our squads, in our play, and in our game that Maresca can take advantage of, because remember this, certain difficulties he'll face at Leicester won't be the same here. For example, you've got a Vestergaard who's like very slow, and obviously if he's getting pressed, if teams find a way to stop their build up or nullify that a little bit, you can then go direct against a Vestergaard, and a lot of teams will have big advantages against that. But let's not forget, we have side of defense that are very comfortable playing out the first lines. We have a midfield that is press resistant and good on the ball. We have a pretty exciting attack. I feel personally we could take it to the next level with like one fantasy option included. But we do have the ingredients. There is something here. It's a very bold call to go for Maresca when he wasn't seen as the favourite, and I'd like to think that there's a strong footballing reason and confidence behind this decision. We know that Maresca has done some great work with Cole Palmer and Lavia already, and he does have a relationship with some board members too, especially Joe Shields. So, you know, with that type of backing, that type of confidence behind his ideas, the fact that us as a fan base got an introduction to life behind his inverted like 3-2 when we saw Cucurella play there during the latter parts of last season, and we could see the instant improvement in the team. It does seem like maybe there is a bit more consideration behind this appointment than we can initially see right now, but I'm not going to tell you to have blind faith and confidence. All I can say, including myself in this year, is that we have to maybe be a bit more sophisticated now with how we judge how the team could evolve and improve. And I do think like with this football, this positional play football, with it requiring patience, I think the patience can be shared between all of us. And I say this as someone where maybe, hands up, I'd probably prefer for us to go a different route, a bit more direct, a bit more dynamic, similar to like what I've seen with Real Madrid's. But it's not to say that this positional play isn't something we could master with time. So my friends, that's the video today. I'm going to have a big tactical breakdown on Maresca, which I've already been working on right now. It will be out tomorrow, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. And on that note, I'm Nini FC. This is BlueLionsTV. I'll see you guys all later.